I'm Harold. I'm 74 years old. And if there is one thing age has given me, besides slower knees and a strong preference for early dinners, it's clarity. The kind that only comes when most of your life is behind you and you finally have the distance to see it whole. I raised 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. They are adults now, with lives of their own, families of their own, worries I can no longer fix, and joys I get to witness from the sidelines. People sometimes ask me what parenting was like, what I would do differently if I had the chance, whether I have regrets. For many years, I gave the same comfortable answer. No regrets. I did my best. But the truth is quieter than that. There are things I wish I had understood earlier, things that might have changed the atmosphere in our home and the shape of my memories. So if you are raising children right now, if your house is loud, your days are long, and you fall into bed each night wondering whether you got any of it right, I want you to listen closely, not because I was an exceptional father, but because I was an ordinary one. And ordinary parents often learn the most important lessons a little later than they wish they had. When my wife told me she was pregnant with our first child, I remember standing very still. Pride filled my chest so quickly it almost hurt. But beneath that pride was something I didn't admit to anyone. Fear. A deep, steady fear. No one really prepares you for the moment you realize another human being will depend on you for everything. Their safety, their confidence, their understanding of love. I thought being a good parent meant being prepared, responsible, reliable. So I focused on the measurable things. I worked longer hours, took fewer vacations, said yes to overtime even when my body begged for rest. I made plans for college funds before my son could speak a full sentence. In my mind, love looked like provision. And provision matters. It truly does. But what I did not understand then is that provision is not the same thing as presence. One evening, when my oldest boy was about 5, he ran up to me the moment I walked through the front door. "Dad, come watch me ride my bike." I can still see his face flushed with excitement, missing 2 front teeth, hope shining out of him like sunlight. But I was tired. Work had been relentless. My briefcase felt heavier than usual, full of paperwork and responsibility. So I smiled and said, "Maybe tomorrow, buddy." Tomorrow became a word I used far too easily. Tomorrow I'll play with you. Tomorrow we'll build that model airplane. Tomorrow I'll listen to your whole story. What I didn't realize is that childhood does not live in tomorrow. It lives in ordinary Tuesdays, in kitchen conversations, in 5-minute games before bedtime. It lives in moments that seem small enough to postpone, until suddenly you cannot. I was not an absent father. I ate dinner with my family most nights. I attended school plays when my schedule allowed it. I helped with homework and taught my children how to shake hands properly and look people in the eye. From the outside, I probably looked dependable, but emotionally, I was often somewhere else, thinking about deadlines, finances, the future. I spent so much time trying to secure their lives that I sometimes forgot to step fully into them. If I could go back, I would worry less about building the perfect future for my children and spend more time sitting on the floor with them. Because here is something no one tells young parents clearly enough. Your children do not measure your love by the size of the house or the number of opportunities you provide. They measure it by your attention, by whether you look up when they speak, by whether you pause long enough to enter their world. There was a night when my daughter, Emily, was 8 years old. I was reading the newspaper in my chair when she walked in quietly, holding a sheet of paper behind her back. "Dad," she said, "I wrote a story at school today. Do you want to hear it?" I remember lowering the paper halfway, but not fully. "Of course," I said, still scanning the headlines. She began reading. It was about a lost puppy who found its way home. Her voice was soft but determined. Halfway through, I nodded distractedly and said, "That's great, sweetheart." She stopped reading, folded the paper, and said something I have never forgotten. "You didn't hear a single word, did you?" Children are perceptive in ways adults often underestimate. I put the newspaper down then, asked her to start again, and she did, but the moment had shifted. Years later, when she was grown, I apologized for that night. She smiled gently and told me she didn't even remember it. But I do. That is another truth about parenting. Sometimes the moments that fade for them stay with you forever. For a long time, I believed my primary role was to guide my children, teach them right from wrong, prepare them for hardship, and guidance is important. But I wish someone had told me this earlier. Your children need connection before they accept correction. When my middle son turned 13, we entered what I privately called the battlefield years. He challenged everything: rules, curfews, expectations. I responded the only way I knew how, with firmness: more rules, more lectures, more consequences. What I did not see was that beneath his defiance was a simple need to be understood. One night, after yet another argument, my wife said something that changed me. "Harold," she said gently, "stop trying to control him and start trying to know him." So the next weekend, I asked him to come with me on a long drive. No agenda, no lecture prepared. For the first hour we barely spoke. Then slowly he began telling me about school, his friends, the pressures I had completely overlooked. That drive taught me something discipline never could. Children open up when they feel safe, not when they feel managed. If I could rewind those years, I would speak less and listen more, much more. Here is another lesson age has carved into me. Perfection is not required. Warmth is. I made mistakes, lost my temper, said things I later wished I could gather back into my mouth. But what mattered most was what came afterward. Did I apologize? Did I repair the moment? Parents sometimes believe apologizing weakens their authority. In truth, it strengthens trust. Your children do not need you to be flawless. They need you to be human. Time, I have learned, is the quiet thief of parenthood. One day you are tying their shoes, and before you fully register the change, they are driving away without you. The last time I lifted my youngest onto my shoulders, I didn't know it would be the last. No music played. No voice announced its importance. It was just another afternoon. That is how most last times happen. Silently. So linger a little longer. Say yes a little more often. Let the dishes wait once in a while. Connection is rarely found in perfectly managed homes. It grows in lived-in ones. Now, at 74, when my children visit, the house fills with a familiar kind of noise. Deeper voices, adult laughter, grandchildren racing down the hallway. Sometimes I sit back and simply watch them, and I feel two things at once: gratitude and humility. Because despite all the ways I stumbled, they came back, not out of obligation, but out of love. That is when you realize something profound. Parenting is less about raising children, and more about building a relationship they will want to return to. If you are in the exhausting years right now, let me ease one burden from your shoulders. You are going to get some things wrong. We all do. But if your home is filled with love, if your children feel seen, if they know they can come to you without fear, you are already doing better than you think. Do not wait for milestones to be present. Life is happening in the ordinary morning routines, the car rides, the bedtime questions that delay sleep but reveal their hearts. Be there for those. Because one day, the house will grow quiet, and you will realize the noise was never something to survive. It was something to treasure. If I could place one piece of wisdom into the hands of every young parent, it would be this: slow down. Not your ambition, not your growth, just your attention. Look at your children a second longer. Listen without planning your response. Memorize the sound of their laughter. These are the details that warm you decades later. I am 74 now. My steps are careful, my mornings unhurried. And when I look back, I don't remember the promotions, the pay raises, the endless worries that once kept me awake. I remember bike rides, bedtime stories, sticky fingers wrapped around mine. Love, it turns out, was never in the grand gestures. It was always in the small, repeated ones. So if you needed reassurance today, here it is. You do not have to be a perfect parent, just be a present one. The rest has a beautiful way of following. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you to hold your child a little closer tonight, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. There are more stories like this, filled with lessons we often learn only after time has passed. And if you're a parent, or even a grown child, reflecting on your own upbringing, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment and share what resonated. Because the more we talk honestly about parenting, the better we become at it, together.